Aryna Sabalenka and Alexandra Eala erupted courtside, and the cameras captured everything. What began as a tense rally turned into a moment the tennis world will never forget. One glare, one shout, one line call that shifted the entire match. The crowd gasped, microphones picked up the chaos, and neither player backed down. Sabalenka's fire, Eala's defiance, two forces colliding under pressure. It was no longer just about points, it became about pride. Behind every serve, every stare, there was something deeper, something simmering beneath the surface. When security stepped in, it was already too late. The world had seen everything. Clips spread online. Within minutes, fans split into sides. Legends wait, and now everyone is asking the same question: what really happened courtside that day? It began long before the outburst, long before the crowd reacted, and the headlines took over. This tension had been building quietly, match after match, glance after glance, between Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning powerhouse of women's tennis, and Alexandra Eala, the rising star determined to carve her place among the elite. Sabalenka has always been known for her intensity, a player driven by emotion, power, and raw energy. Her roar can shake a stadium, her stare can silence a crowd. She is not just a competitor, she is a force. Eala, on the other hand, represents something different: precision, composure, control, a young talent carrying the hopes of a new generation. Her game built on discipline and focus, where Sabalenka burns with intensity. Eala slows the moment down. Their paths first crossed months earlier on tour, a brief handshake that lasted barely a second. But those who noticed could sense something unspoken began there. Maybe it was the clash of personalities, maybe it was how Eala never flinched when Sabalenka's shots exploded past her, or maybe it was the growing whispers that the next major force in tennis was emerging from the Philippines, and she was not intimidated by the established stars. Fast forward to this match, a high-stakes battle in a packed arena under heavy lights, the kind of night where careers shift and legacies are tested. Sabalenka entered as the favorite, but Eala showed no fear. Observers noticed her calm during warm-ups, earbuds and eyes, focused expression unreadable. Sabalenka, in contrast, appeared restless, pacing, speaking under her breath, her coach urging her to stay composed. The opening games were electric, every rally carried weight. The sound of each strike felt sharper, more intense. As if every shot delivered a statement, Eala broke Sabalenka early, and for a moment the top seed looked unsettled. Frustration flashed across her face. The crowd felt it, the tension rising. Commentators began noting the atmosphere, one remarking, "There is clear tension here, this feels personal." The score tightened, sweat glistened under the lights. Eala's calm only fueled Sabalenka's intensity, a dangerous combination for a player who thrives on emotion. During a changeover, when Eala passed close by, their shoulders brushed slightly. Cameras caught the exchange. Sabalenka turned, jaw set, eyes locked. The crowd did not realize it yet, but that single moment would ignite everything. As the umpire called time, both players returned to the court carrying more than tactics or strategy. This was no longer just a match, this was pride, reputation, and emotion colliding, and the breaking point was seconds away. It happened instantly, the kind of moment that defines rivalries. The score stood at 4-3 in the second set. Tension cutting through the air like electricity. Alexandra Eala was serving, her eyes steady, her rhythm untouched, but Aryna Sabalenka was restless, pacing between points, rolling her shoulders, glaring across the net like she could break her opponent with a look alone. Then it happened. The call, Eala's serve kissed the line, a blistering ace down the tee. The crowd exploded, but Sabalenka's hand shot up instantly. Out, she shouted toward the umpire, disbelief written across her face. The chair umpire, calm but firm, shook his head. The ball was good. For a second everything went silent, that dangerous silence before chaos. Sabalenka stepped forward, arguing, her voice sharp. That was out. Everyone saw it. Eala, standing at the baseline, didn't move. She simply stared back, expression cold, almost detached, and that was the trigger. Sabalenka hated being ignored, especially under pressure. She turned toward Eala. "You think that was an?" Eala finally responded, her voice low but cutting. The umpire made the call, play. The crowd reacted not just to the words, but to the tone, calm, controlled, like she refused to be pulled into the storm. Sabalenka's jaw tightened, cameras zoomed in, capturing fury, disbelief, and pride colliding. Then came the next serve. Eala tossed the ball, struck it clean, another ace, same spot this time. Sabalenka didn't challenge. She swung her racket in frustration, missing her own toss. The crowd murmured, the energy shifted, something began to unravel. Commentators noted it. Sabalenka is losing focus, she's letting emotion take over. On the next point, Sabalenka fired a forehand winner, but as Eala walked past, their shoulders brushed again. This time Sabalenka turned fully. "Watch where you're walking," she snapped. Eala didn't slow down, play the ball, not the player. And just like that, everything ignited. Sabalenka dropped her racket, stepping forward, shouting words the microphones barely caught. The umpire rose, calling for calm. Security edged closer. The crowd buzzed, phones raised, capturing every second. Coaches signaled for control, but neither player backed away. Two forces, one driven by rage, the other by defiance, standing meters apart, refusing to blink. Then came the final spark. The umpire called code violation, verbal abuse, Miss Sabalenka. The stadium erupted, boos, cheers, applause blending into chaos. Sabalenka laughed, cold, sharp, almost defiant. Cameras from every angle captured the exact moment she snapped. Eala turned away, jaw set, but the shift had already happened. The match was no longer about skill, it had become a clash of pride. Within minutes, the footage spread everywhere, fan clips, broadcast replays, each showing the same scene: Sabalenka surging forward, shouting across the net, while officials rushed to restore order. The internet doesn't wait for explanations, it creates its own within minutes. Hashtags tied to Alexandra Eala and Aryna Sabalenka surged to the top. Some called it passion, others called it disgrace. One fan wrote, "This isn't competition, it's chaos. What happened to sportsmanship?" Another fired back, "Sabalenka's fire is what makes her great, don't turn her into a villain." But it wasn't just fans, analysts, former players and journalists jumped in. Tennis legend Chris Evert posted that emotions are part of the game, but respect should never leave the court, while a sports blogger ran a viral headline saying Eala stood tall, even Sabalenka couldn't break her focus. Back at the tournament, the tension only intensified during the next changeover. Cameras zoomed in on both benches. Sabalenka's coach leaned in, speaking quickly, trying to steady her, while Eala sat quietly, a towel over her head, refusing to even look across the court. It felt like the calm before another storm. Then the replay hit the giant screen. The shoulder bump, the glare, the walk past. The crowd erupted as it looped again and again. Gasps, boos, applause splitting the arena. The umpire had to stop play more than once to settle the noise. At one point, Sabalenka shouted toward the stand something about respect. The microphones didn't catch it clearly, but the emotion was obvious. She wasn't just battling Eala anymore, she was battling perception, the fear of being seen as the aggressor. Meanwhile, Eala's composure became her edge each time Sabalenka's emotions rose. Eala seemed even calmer, more locked in, and fans noticed a viral clip showed her walking back to her chair after the exchange, captioned, "When calm is louder than chaos." It exploded. Online sports channels replayed the moment non-stop, debating who crossed the line. One anchor said, "We've seen Sabalenka emotional before, but this feels personal." The post-match press conference only added fuel. Sabalenka admitted she was emotional but human, that everyone loses control sometimes, but Eala's response landed differently, calm, direct, almost surgical. She said she was there to play tennis, and what happened outside the points others could judge. The quote echoed everywhere. Many saw it as a quiet statement that while Sabalenka lost control, Eala stayed composed. By the next day, both sides were trending the digital version of a divided stadium. The story had grown beyond the match into something bigger than tennis. The morning after headlines focused not on the score but the incident. Clips from every angle flooded social media, slow motion edits, reactions, commentary from people who hadn't even watched the match. Everyone had an opinion, and every opinion added fuel for Sabalenka. It became a storm. Her team tried to manage the fallout with statements and interviews, but the noise didn't fade, and concerns even began to surface about her behavior under pressure. One brand even paused an upcoming campaign featuring Aryna Sabalenka for a player known for power and dominance. This was different. It was no longer about her tennis, it was about her temper. Sabalenka tried to downplay it, saying she plays with emotion and reacted in the moment, but fans were not convinced. The footage of her stepping toward Alexandra Eala, shouting, eyes burning, told its own story. Meanwhile, Eala's silence only amplified everything. She refused to go beyond a brief statement. No posts, no reactions, no interviews, and that restraint turned her into something more than a winner. She became the calm in the storm, a symbol of composure, dignity, and quiet strength. But behind that calm, her camp was not untouched. Reports suggested her coach was contacted by officials to review sportsmanship. Even though she did not start the clash, organizers were under pressure to stay neutral, to show equal treatment, the kind of quiet politics that happens behind closed doors. The Women's Tennis Association released a brief statement reminding athletes of expected conduct. Passion is welcome, disrespect is not. It named no one, but everyone understood the target for Sabalenka. It hit hard. She had built her identity as a fierce competitor, not a villain. Now every camera followed her differently, every reaction scrutinized. Even a simple racket drop in her next match drew gasps from the crowd. For Eala, the opposite happened. Her following surged overnight, thousands of new fans, media calling her the next mental force in tennis. But with that attention came pressure. She was now the face of composure, the player who handled Sabalenka. Yet both players understood the truth. The world was not chasing fairness, it was chasing drama, and their rivalry had delivered it perfectly. As one journalist wrote, it was no longer about who won the match, but who won the moment, and in that moment neither truly did. Days passed, but the tension did not disappear. It evolved beneath polished interviews and careful statements. Something deeper remained, a mix of pride, regret, and silence. For Sabalenka, the spotlight felt different. She was no longer just the highlight, she was the controversy. Her team pushed her to move forward, but that moment replayed in her mind, not out of hatred, but because it showed her a loss of control. Reports suggested she stayed behind after the match, sitting alone, still in her kit, eyes lowered. One observer described her as someone who did not recognize herself. Meanwhile, Eala faced her own aftermath. Publicly, she was calm, controlled, admired. Privately, it was different. Those close to her knew she had broken down that night, not from fear but from exhaustion. She never wanted to be part of controversy. She wanted to be known for her tennis, not for another player's outburst. Days later, she finally spoke, carefully and with respect, saying she still respects Sabalenka as a player and that emotions can take over sometimes. "I don't judge her for that, but I hope we all learn something from moments like these." That single quote shifted the entire conversation. Fans who were ready to turn this into a war began to soften. Even Aryna Sabalenka felt it. According to someone from her team, she read Alexandra Eala words quietly and said she didn't have to say that, but she did. 2 weeks later, fate brought them together again at a charity event. Organizers expected tension, but when Sabalenka saw Eala, she walked over, offered her hand and said, "We both lost that day, let's not let it happen again." Eala nodded and agreed. There were no cameras, no viral clips, just two athletes finding a moment of peace in a world that feeds on conflict, yet the story refused to fade. Every highlight, every recap kept replaying that same scene, the shout, the stare, the explosion that split the sport, because moments like these don't disappear, they become part of tennis history, as one commentator said. Tennis thrives on rivalry, but sometimes rivalry reveals more about humanity than victory ever can. Time soften the noise, but not the memory. Months later, the impact still lingered for Sabalenka. It became a turning point. Her next tournaments showed a calmer, more controlled version of herself. The intensity remained, but something deeper had changed. She even admitted she was learning that strength doesn't always need to come with fire. Sometimes it can be quiet. For Eala, the moment became her arrival on the global stage. She went from rising talent to headline, not because of a trophy, but because of her composure under pressure. Opportunities poured in, but what stood out most was her restraint. She never mocked. Sabalenka never used a moment for attention. She stayed focused, respectful, and grounded. As the season continued, they crossed paths again, not as rivals burning with tension, but as professionals sharing the same space. A simple nod replaced the glare, a quiet understanding replacing conflict. Online debates never stopped. Some said Sabalenka lost control, others said it was pure passion, but beyond the noise, one truth remained: that moment changed them both. It exposed how thin the line is between emotion and control, pride and patience, fire and calm. The sport will remember the chaos, the arguments, the viral clips, and the divided crowd, but those who look deeper will see something else, a story of growth, two athletes learning in real time what it truly means to compete at the highest level. In the end, tennis didn't lose, it gained a rivalry shaped not by hatred but by evolution, one that reminded fans why they love the game, not just for wins but for the human moments behind them, because beneath the lights and pressure, athletes are not machines. They break, they learn, they recover, and they do it in front of the world. And maybe that is why this story matters. It was never just about a clash, it was a reflection of the intensity, flaws, and beauty of competition itself. So what do you think? Was this rivalry born from chaos or from the kind of passion that keeps tennis alive? Let me know. And if you want more untold stories, rivalries, and emotional moments from women's tennis, stay tuned, because this is only the beginning.